Let's bring in the Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor now joins me live from Sydney. What's your overall assessment of the RBA review, Mr. Taylor?
Well, Kieran, we welcome the release of the review. We see a lot in this to like, in particular, focus on keeping the Reserve Bank focused on the things that really matter, and particularly inflation. I mean, there's nothing that's more important around the kitchen table or the board table, for that matter, right now than the rising costs that both households and businesses are having to face. And we need a Reserve Bank that's independent, credible, capable, and is absolutely focused on that objective of bringing inflation inside the target range. We welcome the fact that the target range of 2 to 3% has been retained. I don't think now's the time to change that. And we welcome the fact that there's a very strong focus here on a capable Reserve Bank that's transparent and accountable. There have been errors in the recent past, and we need to make sure that everything is done that it possibly can be done to prevent those errors in the future.
You've had a number of briefings from the review panel and were given the report early as well, straight after the Cabinet was briefed on it. What's the argument for having a separate committee just on monetary policy?
Well, there's two very different roles of governance in the Reserve Bank right now. One is traditional board governance, making sure the organisation is working the way it should, and the second is focusing on monetary policy decisions, those interest rate decisions that affect every Australian. And I think there's a very compelling case to keep those two roles different. They're very different skill sets, very different sets of experience that you're looking for in those two different roles. And of course, that's why many countries across the world have separated the two out, including the United States, the UK and elsewhere. And so I do think there's a strong case for separation. What's crucial is that the right people are appointed to those roles, and that there's a process that appoints the right people to those roles that's not political, that gets the absolute right people into those absolutely crucial roles, because they have such a big effect on Australians, whether it's households or businesses.
They're talking about a diversity of skills, obviously all in relation to the economy. The government and the Treasurer are talking about the need for those aware of how the labour market intersects with macroeconomic conditions. What would you like to see with those 9 members of the Monetary Policy Committee? What's crucial in your mind as to the capacity of the individuals who are chosen?
Well, you've got the deep and diverse experience and knowledge across the various areas of the economy where they can make the really difficult judgments that they have to make about what should happen to interest rates. That's what we need. That's a really tough set of decisions. They have to be capable of getting out and giving speeches on this, justifying the decisions that have been made, laying out their perspectives on it, and giving all Australians much more transparency and clarity about where the Reserve Bank is going and why. We are all making decisions that are affected by this. When we buy a house, when we invest in a business, all of these decisions, when we borrow money, all of these decisions are affected by the Reserve Bank, Kieran, and this is why we need that clarity, we need that accountability, we need that transparency, and I think that the review panel is moving us in the right direction. None of this should take away from the fundamental point that government policy is central to bringing down inflation. And I think it's easy to forget that. But I tell you what, it's not just about the Reserve Bank, and that's why the upcoming budget and what the Treasurer does and the government does in this upcoming budget is so crucial. What we don't need is a big spending, big taxing traditional Labor budget.
Yes, so if we move from bipartisanship to the budget, I don't think there's going to be as much of you being on the same page as Treasurer Chalmers. Are you worried that there is going to be an explosion of spending? We know commodity prices are up. The coffers are going to be full from a much better performance on that front than had been forecast. The Treasurer says he's going to be responsible. I asked him today, will it be cautious or ambitious, this budget? His answer, responsible. So therefore, would have to be putting downward pressure on inflation.
Well, you take that as a cast iron guarantee, do you, Kieran? They're great words. Let's see what actually happens. Because in the last budget, he said he was being responsible, and he spent an extra $115 billion. $115 billion over the forwards. That's 4 years. So if that's responsible, I'd hate to see irresponsible. I think what he means is he's going to ignore the extreme calls from the extreme left. But that's not necessarily responsible. What we need is a recommitment to budget balance. That went from the last budget. It's just gone. That's been in the fiscal strategy since the Charter of Budget Honesty went into place in the 1990s under Peter Costello. It's gone. No commitment to budget balance. If you want to get inflation down, you have to have a government that is making ends meet, because if they don't make ends meet, households and businesses are going to have to do it for them. We all pay the price for a government that can't manage its spending.